Imagine discovering that a plant could change the way you think, feel, or see the world, thousands of years before anyone knew what a chemical was. No pharmacy, no laboratory, no warning label, just a strange plant growing in the wild, and a body that reacted to it in ways no one around you could explain. So when did humans first realize that some plants could alter the mind? The truth is, archaeologists can't identify the very first drug. That moment, whenever and wherever it happened, left no trace anyone could ever recover. But they can find clues, some of them thousands of years old, scattered across continents, waiting in pottery, in graves, in the ash of ancient fires. And one of the oldest clues may not have been a plant at all. It was a drink. Modern humans tend to sort substances into neat categories. Food in one box, medicine in another, alcohol somewhere else entirely, and drugs treated as something different again. But ancient people almost certainly didn't draw those same lines. A single plant could be food one season and medicine in one context, a stimulant in another, and a religious substance in another, all without anyone thinking these were separate categories at all. Archaeological evidence, or psychoactive plant use during the Paleolithic, remains genuinely limited. Fragments and inferences rather than clear proof, while the evidence becomes considerably stronger once we move into later periods, when people began leaving behind pottery, residues, and burial sites that scientists can actually test. So instead of searching for the first drug, a search that may never have a real answer, we have to search instead for the first unmistakable evidence that humans were deliberately using something to change their experience. Long before civilization, in any recognizable sense, humans were already deeply familiar
with the plant world around them. They interacted with thousands of different species across their lifetimes, learning and
through generations of trial, observation, and probably no small amount of real risk.
Which plants offered nutrition, which ones could heal a wound or settle a stomach, and which ones were
dangerous enough to avoid entirely. Somewhere within that body of accumulated plant knowledge, at a smaller category, plants containing compounds capable of directly affecting the nervous system, altering perception, mood, or awareness in ways that would have felt genuinely strange the first time. Anyone experienced them? Research suggests that medicinal plant knowledge likely reaches deep into the Paleolithic, but direct evidence confirming intentional psychoactive use during this same period remains far less harder to separate from ordinary foraging, medicine, or simple accident. But eventually, humans left behind something scientists could actually test, physical, chemical evidence, rather than educated guesswork. And it reveals that people were producing a fermented, alcoholic beverage more than 8,000 years ago. The story leads to Jiahu, a Neolithic settlement in ancient China. Chemical analysis of residue, preserved inside pottery vessels from this site, identified a fermented beverage made from a combination of rice, honey, and fruit, dated to approximately 7,000 to 6,600 BCE. This isn't speculation built from indirect clues. It's direct chemical evidence, extracted from the physical residue left inside containers people actually used. Fermentation, the natural biological process at work here, reliably produces alcohol as a byproduct, meaning this ancient beverage would have had a genuine intoxicating effect on anyone who drank enough of it. This is direct evidence of an alcoholic beverage, but the exact reasons people consumed it can't be reduced to a single purpose, whether that was a shared meal, a ceremony, or simply something enjoyed for how it made them feel. The residue alone can't tell us. But alcohol wasn't the only path ancient humans found toward an altered experience. thousands of kilometers away, on an entirely different continent, people were discovering something else. A plant that didn't need fermenting and brewing, or any vessel at all. The story shifts to ancient South America, to sites in northern Peru, where researchers uncovered coca leaves dating to roughly 8,000 calibrated years before the present. Alongside those leaves, archaeologists also found calcite, a mineral historically used to help extract coca's alkaloids during the act of chewing. Together, this combination represents one of the strongest pieces of evidence we have for genuinely ancient, deliberate, psychoactive plant use anywhere in the archaeological record. It's important to be clear about what this actually was and wasn't. This has nothing to do
with cocaine in any modern, processed sense. This was leaf chewing, a slow-release, low-intensity stimulant. Practice, something closer to how people today might use caffeine than anything resembling a modern illicit drug.
And unlike alcohol, coca required no brewery, no fermentation process, no specialized container at all. The plant itself was, in a very real sense, the entire technology. From there, the story moves toward a third substance, one that appears repeatedly across a much wider stretch of Central Asia. Cannabis enters the picture next. At the Yanghai Cemetery in Xinjiang, China, archaeologists uncovered a cannabis material roughly 2,700 years old, containing THC along with other chemical markers consistent with psychoactive potency. Researchers studying this discovery have proposed several possible explanations: medicinal use, deliberate psychoactive use, or use connected to divination and ritual practice. Without claiming certainty about which explanation or combination of explanations is correct, even stronger, evidence comes from another site entirely: Zhirzhankul Cemetery, high in the eastern Pamir Mountains.
As part of mortuary ceremonies, dated to around 500 BCE, evidence strong enough to suggest this wasn't an
accidental exposure, but an intentional ritual practice built specifically around the plant's psychoactive properties. But perhaps the most important discovery hiding inside all of this evidence isn't simply that ancient humans would have used psychoactive plants and drinks. It's why they may have used them at all. Across nearly every one of these archaeological discoveries, alcohol residue inside ceremonial-looking pottery, coca leaves paired with ritual burial goods, cannabis burned specifically at funerals, a consistent pattern starts to emerge. These substances repeatedly turn up connected to medicine, ritual, divination, funerary practice, religion, and organized social ceremony, not simply scattered evidence of everyday casual use. This is an important distinction the evidence actually supports, and one worth being careful about. It would be a mistake to picture ancient people as simply searching for a recreational high in any modern sense. For many of these societies, an altered state of consciousness may have carried an entirely different meaning, interpreted as a form of communication with spirits, a pathway toward healing, a genuine religious experience, or a way of accessing knowledge, believed to exist beyond the ordinary senses altogether. And this reframes the entire question in a genuinely, maybe humans weren't simply searching for drugs at all, in anything resembling our modern sense of that word. Maybe, in many of these cases, they were searching for something else entirely, something that believed these substances could help them reach. Understanding why these substances mattered leads naturally to an even bigger question about how any of this knowledge was possible in the first place. Before any of these discoveries could become established, deliberate practices, someone, somewhere, had to work out an enormous amount of discoveries could become established, deliberate practices. Someone, somewhere, had to work out an enormous amount of practical knowledge through nothing but observation and repeated experience. Which plants were genuinely safe to consume, and which carried real, sometimes fatal risk? How much of a given substance produced a noticeable effect, and how much crossed over into danger? How a plant needed to be prepared, dried, burned, fermented, or chewed to actually produce its intended effect. Whether certain substances worked better, and when, within a community's broader life, cycle, or calendar, these substances are considered appropriate to use at all. Archaeological and ethnobotanical research suggests that prehistoric
communities gradually accumulated genuinely extensive knowledge of plant compounds and their effects.
Even though reconstructing the exact process by which that knowledge developed, generation after generation, remains extremely difficult from the archaeological record alone. The truly astonishing is part of this story isn't simply that ancient humans discovered substances capable of altering the mind. It's how much accumulated, functional knowledge they built around those substances, entirely without chemistry textbooks, laboratories, or any of the tools modern science relies on today. Which brings this entire investigation to its central realization. There was probably never one single moment when humans invented the drugs. No single discovery, no single culture, no single person who started it all. Instead, different communities, spread across entirely different continents, appear to have arrived at similar discoveries, largely. Some fermented plants into intoxicating drinks.
Some chewed
Leaves for a milder, sustained effect. Some burned specific plants during ritual and ceremony. Some clearly used these
same substances medicinally, and many wove them directly into religious and communal practice, treating
them as something considerably more meaningful than simple intoxication. There was probably never a single first drug. The real history begins much earlier and much more quietly than any single discovery, as humans slowly learned through patient, repeated observation across countless generations that the natural world could do more than simply feed the body. It could change the mind. And the archaeological record offers us only glimpses of that much longer, largely invisible process. Alcohol, with direct evidence reaching back roughly 9,000 years. Coca, with evidence extending from at least 8,000 years. Cannabis, confirmed by chemical evidence reaching back at least 2,700 years. These are simply the oldest traces we happen to have found and been able to test, not necessarily the true moment any clips of this activity actually began. Today, we understand molecules, receptors, dosage, addiction, and pharmacology. How did ancient plants alter human minds? An entire modern scientific framework is built to explain exactly why these substances affect the human body the way they do. Ancient humans possessed none of that scientific language, or understanding. And yet they observed the natural world closely enough, patiently enough, across enough generations, to discover that certain plants and certain fermented drinks could profoundly change human experience, long before anyone could explain precisely why. Long before any laboratory could isolate a single molecule, humans were already quietly experimenting with the chemistry of nature itself. They didn't know what was happening inside the brain, but they knew, beyond any doubt, that some plants could make the world feel very different. And that discovery may be almost as old as civilization itself.